Hey guys, how's it going? Eli here, back with another video where today we're going to be breaking down the XY Sun and Moon era and taking a look at some product and seeing are these generations slash eras really worth the investment. Without further ado, let's just jump right into it. So as always, weekly giveaways, all you got to do to enter, leave a like, comment down below, and be subscribed to the channel. 3 winners each and every week, and then you can enter in 3 times by just leaving a comment and liking on any of the videos we post Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Now, jumping into it. Oh yeah, and of course, letting people know what is the giveaway for. 6 Fusion Strike booster packs for each winner. Now, getting into it. So like I had mentioned before, we're going to kind of talk about XY Sun and Moon era, and I feel like as far as it goes, with a lot of what I really talk about, it kind of builds upon each other. And so this is going to be one of those episodes where if you hear things kind of repeat, and you've been following me for a while, you're going to see really that foundation being built upon as far as a lot of the ideas and concept that I've talked about in the past. And so the main things we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at the population report for evolutions. We're going to be taking a look at the single value for Hidden Fates, and then we're going to take a look at the booster box prices. So the first thing I think I want to take a look at to start is we're going to take a look at the overall booster box prices. Now, obviously, I've talked about this, like I said, in some of my other videos, but as far as it goes, you know, you have these booster boxes, first and foremost, on TCG Player that are completely ridiculously over actual priced. If you go to, let's take a look at a Furious Fist booster box, you can see that the price in and of itself is not anywhere near. Why did it go Furicide? What the heck? That's so funny. Furious Fist booster boxes, going back to it. If you actually take a look, you can see that it's not anywhere near the price. I don't even know what Furicide is, so I guess we'll learn something new every day. You can actually get it for about half the price of what they're looking for right now. So in and of itself, you know, obviously I like to show you guys a lot of the booster box prices on TCG Player, because for the most part, it's pretty indicative of the prices. But you gotta still always be aware, because sometimes the booster boxes that are in the older are a lot less accurate, I should say. But for like something like, let's say, Phantom Forces, this one is a lot more accurate when it comes to the overall pricing. Of course, we can take a look and see the last sold listings to really see, okay, what is the actual, you know, kind of pricing around that. And it looks to be around, you know, $1,200, $1,300, you know, $1,400, which is around the right price of what's going on right now. So this is a fair price, in my personal opinion. Obviously, don't, you know, take a look at that. I think that one is a little bit misleading. But at the end of the day, it's one of these things where XY booster boxes have held really good value, especially all things considered. I mean, when you take a set like Furious Fist, it wasn't the most popular set, but it still did really well, especially considering it's one of the older sets. XY Phantom Forces, that's a set that did really well, understandably, because it did have the first silver card with the Dialga. It's first and last. I really wish they did more with the silver cards. And then, of course, you know, you have the XY Evolutions booster box, which we saw hit its peak at around $1,000. And for a while, literally back, I remember during the start of the pandemic, and then even in the middle of the pandemic, you could buy these booster boxes for $100 to sub $100, and they were just sitting there for a while, right? And so for it to go from $100 and to just absolutely pop off like it did, really goes to show you just how much, you know, exponential growth we've seen in the market. And so, of course, XY Evolutions was one of those sets that was hyper overprinted, like printed into the ground. It was one of those sets where you literally had booster boxes everywhere. LGSs were just trying to offload them, on top of the fact that they were just taking pack and just throwing them in anything and everything. So it really wasn't as expensive of a set until the pandemic really hit. Then it started becoming demand, because once people really started to, you know, get into the Logan Paul effect, as we'll say, they really started to want to, you know, have that nostalgic hit without having to spend you know, a ton of money. So, and this was that kind of way to be able to do that. So, you know, when taking a look at these booster box prices, as far as it goes, they've taken a, you know, slight hit. Like I mentioned before, when it comes to Evolutions, it was at 1,000, dropped down to 700. It's about a 30% drop. But in all honesty, like the overall hit that a lot of the XY era, which is very interesting to see, it hasn't taken as large as a hit as a lot of these other generations. I mean, same thing when taking a look at like booster boxes from the Sun and Moon era. You've got Team Up. Team Up has done nothing but go up. It hasn't really gone down. As far as Ancient Origins, same deal. You know, literally, this has just gone up exponentially. Cosmic Eclipse also done the exact same thing when it comes to its overall growth. So a lot of these prices, when it comes to the booster boxes, have gone up. Only ones that have gone down are Lost Thunder and then Fates Collide, if we're really talking about like a drastic drop. Like I said, obviously we saw, you know, some minuscule drops in regards to, you know, evolutions with a 30%. And, you know, obviously you might say 30% is not that minuscule. It is when you consider the fact of the matter that the rest of the market's going anywhere between 50 to 90% dropped. And then Unified Minds, but that was because of a reprint. Same thing with Unbroken Bonds. I mean, this was literally selling for like $350 like, you know, 6 months ago. So this has still gone up. Fates Collide and Lost Thunder, like I said, they had like some pre-release kits that kind of popped up that are still available. And so literally you're seeing them listed right now for $289, and before they were selling for $400. I'm not saying you should pick up Fates Collide, but I am saying that if you are going to want to pick up Fates Collide, I think that now is a really good time because of the prices dropping so much. Not financial advice, not financial advisor. And then the same deal with Lost Thunder. So a lot of these booster box prices really haven't seen that huge drop. So trying to find these opportunities and taking a look at these ones that have had those reprints or have just had old supply kind of pop up is kind of going to be your best bet when looking at it, you know. And like I said before, man, the era in and of itself has both for XY and Sun and Moon performed really well. Now, of course, the question then becomes, should I invest in every single, you know, kind of booster box? Now, obviously, I've talked about this before in some of my older videos. You know, not every single booster box is going to perform better than the others. Obviously, you've got Crimson Invasion, you've got Steam Siege. These are sets that did not perform that well, and for that reason, even though they're, you know, older sets, like for example Steam Siege, I mean, and I know it's a dumb comparison, but Steam Siege, Cosmic Eclipse. Steam Siege came out in like 2014, 2015. Cosmic Eclipse came out in like 2018. Cosmic Eclipse is obviously, you know, like 2.5, 3 times more than Steam Siege, even though it's like, you know, 3 years, 4 years older of a set, and that just comes down to the demand, right? And so with that being said, obviously, you know, I think that, you know, understanding which sets are going to be the best performing, I think is very important. But also knowing that when it comes to this current era, we haven't really seen a huge drop off yet. So I wouldn't be surprised if we really started to see it kind of bleed out within the next year. Obviously, I could be completely wrong. It could continue to perform strong, but it's been that kind of niche right now, all things considered, especially when you take a look at eras like Black and White, Diamond and Pearl, and older that have started to really drop off. You would think, considering those are a lot scarcer eras, that they would see a lot less of a drop off. But I think it really ultimately comes down to, since this is kind of that era that's a little bit more affordable for people, then it has a lot higher of an overall demand because, you know, relatively speaking, of course, it's going to be a lot more affordable for someone to buy one of these older booster boxes for anywhere between $200 to $500 rather than dropping, you know, $1,000+ on an older era. And so plus, I mean, a lot of these sets are really fun to open. But moving on from the sealed product, that's kind of my personal opinion on that. You know, wrapping it up, like I said, Lost Thunder, XY both had the most recent drops. So if you're trying to look on picking that up, now is probably a good time. Now taking a look at, we're going to say, well, let's go into the overall population report. And this is when talking about singles graded. And this is why, you know, usually I would, of course, take a look and I would show you guys like, okay, here's the overall market for the overall singles and how it's kind of, you know, gone up and down, up and down. But to be honest with you, I want to focus more on the overall population report when it comes to investing in, you know, singles in general and just the overall future of that, because this is going to be really indicative of just my personal thought process behind overall single prices. As you guys can see now, this is from the Evolutions. Charizard Holographic. The holographic Charizard has had over 18,000 submissions, and it has currently had around 339 PSA 10s. Now, of course, if we're going to take a look at the other Charizard, we can see that it's had about 8,654 sent in, and then it's had about 5,000 of itself with the PSA 10s. Now, of course, you know, you can see such a huge contrast when it comes to the two. Obviously, you see with the Mega Charizard, it has a lot higher of a PSA 10 count, especially considering how much that's been submitted. Half as much has been submitted as the regular Holo Charizard, but the Holo Charizard only has around 300. Now, the reason for this, of course, and this is kind of, you know, a variable that you have to understand with a lot of these, you know, eras, everything's going to change. But the overall print for the holographic Charizard was very poor. The PSA 10 rates were, of course, very low because of that, versus the Mega Charizard, the overall prints were very easy. The 10s were very abundant. And so for that reason, I think that that specific Mega Charizard 10 is very indicative of when it comes to overall, grading prices as well as grading populations. I'm not saying that you should or shouldn't invest in overall singles, period. But what I am saying is that you can, of course, always find your niches with the eras that are going to have very low population reports. Obviously, I've mentioned before, I think BGS is really going to be the future with black labels when it comes to, modern sealed product, because that's kind of going to be your kicker when it comes to scarcity being the factor that's going to allow you to have that real investment opportunity. But I think, relatively speaking, the singles for this generation are going to be very cheap, all things considered. Of course, if you want to say to yourself, well, there's still the Sun and Moon Charizard GX. It's selling for, around $800. But in reality, that's, a card that was selling for around $2,000 to $2,500 at one point, and it's, now selling for $800. So its overall drop off has been very exponential, and singles across the board for Hidden Fates have absolutely dropped off like crazy. So it's one of these things that the population report, it's ever growing, especially considering these are still considered, modern era. You've got your ultra modern, which is the Sword and Shield era, and then you have your XY, and your Sun and Moon era, which is considered just the straight up modern era. You got ultra modern, and then newer vintage, and so on. Just really depends on how you want to kind of classify things. But with that being said, that's just my personal opinion as far as it goes when just discussing overall single prices on PSA cards. I think unless you're going to really display it, it's going to be a lot more affordable for you. Sorry, I shouldn't say that as a display. Unless you're going to take your own cards that you have duplicates of and you're going to grade it for your overall collection, or you're just trying to flip because you have extras. Individually opening up product and trying to get it graded, for the most part, is not going to be that profitable long term unless you get a real big hit that you can try and get a good flip on, especially considering the current prices or the current state of the overall grading market. We haven't seen these bulk kind of discounted prices. It's not like it was before where you're able to get those discounted prices for $7.50 or $10. So, versus if you talk about some of these older eras, like I mentioned before, last talking about Diamond and Pearl, you've got these hollows where if you were to literally open these booster boxes, they've got these 1, 2, 3 population reports, where there's just literally like I said, 1, 2, or 3 in the overall pop. And so you're able to find a lot more value from that, versus in this era, it's like thousands plus. So if you're going to go that route, then I suggest going the BGS route. If you're trying to just pick up some of these PSA 10 cards, you can always find them, in my personal opinion, at a decent price online, especially considering how much has really dropped, especially with Hidden Fates. And that's going to transition into what we're looking at next, which is just overall singles, and we're going to take a look specifically at Hidden Fates. This Charizard not that long ago was going for around $600, which of course is very expensive for a shiny Charizard. Now, of course, Hidden Fates is still a very valuable set. And so with that being said, it is still a set that has performed well. The cards in and of themselves are still relatively high. When you really take a look at these cards in and of themselves, this was selling for, I think it's at its peak, 180. This was selling for like 120. I know this one has performed the best, Cynthia. I think at one point was upwards of 90 to 100. So it hasn't absolutely just, crapped the bed like a lot of these other cards. Mewtwo, I remember, was selling for like 160 at one point. And I mean, once you really get into the singles, for the graded ones, that's where you really start to see the overall price drop off. That's where it gets super duper extreme. Because there's just so much that's being put on the books. And I actually saw a video that was just recently posted by Twice Baked Jake. For those people that don't know his channel, shout out to him. He creates good content. He just did an overall return video for cards that he had sent out to be graded back in November 2020. And he just now received them like a year and a half later almost. So if that doesn't go to show how backed up the logs are when it comes to, PSA trying to get caught up, and how much product they still have to really grade, especially considering the fact of the matter that a lot of these cards are in the, Sun and Moon XY era, on top of, specifically like Hidden Fates. You're going to really see a huge, once again, continuation of, in my personal opinion, a downtrend. Now, of course, this is a highly, sought after set, so there is higher demand, but the market in and of itself has seen a general downtrend. And so personally speaking, I think that you can really start to actually consider, because in my personal opinion, obviously not financial advice, not a financial advisor, I'll continue to say that forever. I've always kind of looked at Hidden Fates and been like, really cool set, but it's not worth buying. I think I'm going to wait. 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 And now we're at a point where I'm starting to get to that point where I'm like, I don't know if I want to wait anymore, because it just keeps going down more and more. And we can take a look at this and we can take a look at like some of the cards, and we can see, okay, how much, Scizor, GX Shiny, PSA 10. We can take a look at that card, just see what the overall price of this is, It's selling for around $80 in a overall PSA 10 condition. Which you might say to yourself, you might consider that to be expensive. You might consider that not to be expensive. Obviously, $24 is what it currently is. So if you, get the card graded, obviously you're going to, double, triple your value. Of course, you're not going to be able to get those old prices as you were before. But with that being said, it's one of those cards that there's so many of them, you're still going to have those opportunities to get them for the 60s, and then as high as the 80s. So because the range is just so high. I mean, look, you saw one right here for 70, you saw one here for 65. And I remember this was selling not that long ago for around 120. I mean, here's a sale, 176. Obviously, we can take a look and see, how indicative that actual price was. But look, 160, 117. And this is back in October, ladies and gentlemen. Like, look at how drastically the overall price went. It went, obviously, we can, determine whether that's real or not. 100, 160, 120. Then it goes down to 80, 76, 135, 90. And I mean, it just has this kind of like fluctuation range that slowly grinds down. And then once you start hitting into November, it starts to go down to 70, 75. You had one outlier of 80, 70, 70, 85, 70. Like, it starts to really drop off. You hit that 120 to 160 range, and then all of a sudden it goes to 60 to 80 range. So you're seeing a drop off of nearly 50+% with a lot of these cards. So that's why I personally am like starting to take a look at these cards, and I'm saying to myself, this is actually really interesting, because now you're really starting to see these opportunities. And I've talked about this, like I said before, in some of my older videos. So this is really nothing new to a lot of the people that have been following the channel for the past 6 months plus. But it's still something I like to reiterate, and kind of, for those people that don't, watch every single one of my videos, go back and then show you guys like, hey, here's the kind of progression that we've seen for the past, 6 months. And you can go back and see what the prices were that I had shown in my older videos, because it's really cool to see this kind of stuff. And this is why I like to do a lot of follow-up videos when it comes to like building upon these ideas, because if we can go back and we can say, oh, look, Eli has a video that he posted, and this was the price at the time, and this is now what it is now, what we can see in this most recent video, then you really get to see that progression and that kind of, downtrend or uptrend, depending upon the direction in which, the market is moving. And then, of course, depending upon, whether I was right or wrong with my predictions, because, of course, I think history is the best sign of telling whether or not I was wrong or right. And then from there, always seeing what happened as to why I was right or wrong. And so, yeah, it's just it's one of these sets that it's an amazing set. It's seen a huge drop off, but at the end of the day, for the most part, it seems as if you're really just talking about a lot of these modern sets, the overall singles and graded are just kind of your best opportunity when it comes to being able to get some really cool cards at a decent affordable price. Once again, from an investment perspective, unless you're going that kind of BGS route, then in my personal opinion, I would not. I would not look into long-term opening up sealed and then getting it graded. But I'm going to kind of wrap up the video with the final 3 thoughts, kind of going over the final 3 things that we talked about. So number 1, main point is XY era as well as Sun and Moon era sealed product has performed really well. You haven't seen a huge drop off outside of Lost Thunder XY, which of course I had mentioned before. If you're going to pick up some of these era booster boxes, now's the time to pick up those ones because of the pre-release kits popping up. Of course, second point that I made as well, not every single XY era in Sun and Moon is going to perform the same. Taking a look at Cosmic, which is 4 years younger than Steam Siege, but it is 2.5 to 3 times as expensive as Steam Siege. So really understanding and gauging what set is popular and as for why is very important. And then leading next into that, going into overall population report, bringing up the fact of the matter that, like I said, I think BGS, once again, doubling down is going to be the future when it comes to scarcity, because product in and of itself is really easy to grade. But as we, of course, saw with the overall holographic Charizard, you've had 18,000, being graded. And, of course, from that, you've only seen around 300 that have actually gotten those PSA 10. So you are going to have those niches where certain cards are not going to have those high population because of poor printing or whatever. But for the most part, if you're really talking about trying to send in cards for getting a flipping value opening seal product in this generation is not going to be the same as it is with a lot of the overall scarcer generations. And then just in overall general when it comes to just overall investment into single graded cards in these eras, unless once again they are very low populated, you're going to see a lot sharper decline in times like this when we're seeing the market in an overall downtrend, because as more product is being opened, there's going to be more in the market. And then next and last but not least, going into once again the hidden fates. Hidden fates is seeing cards drop off 50+% both in the overall singles category, with of course taking a look at, like I said, the Charizard, and seeing that it's absolutely just kind of plummeted in value. And then taking a look at the Shiny Scizor that we saw as a graded card, going for as high as 160 and then now as low as 60. Seeing that huge drop off in a lot of these graded cards as PSA is really backed up in its log, I think you're once again going to say to yourself, it's a good opportunity from a collecting perspective to come in and buy on a lot of these cards, whether it be ungraded or graded for your collection. But from an investment perspective, unless you're buying up a lot of these cards for the purpose of sending them in for BGS and really taking that shot at that pristine 10, once again, not financial advice, not financial advisor, everything's not guaranteed. And of course, none of these companies are even open for bulk submissions, so that's an even higher risk. Sending these cards in to be graded is very much so going to be something that is not of interest. However, one thing I will say is, as far as it goes, as the set does become older, I do expect a lot of these single prices to go up. So of course, if you are saying to yourself, I want to invest in cards that I do think singles specifically that are going to go up, I do think that you will see that kind of turnaround as the overall prints, and as especially with PSA finally trying to hopefully get caught up within the next year or two. That's when you're going to really see that slowdown progression, and you're going to see that turnaround after the demand kind of starts to pick up once again. But those are kind of all my main points for the overall video. Let me know what you guys think if you have any questions, and yeah, feel free to leave a like, comment down below. Once again, it will enter you into our weekly giveaways. And then as always, also subscribe to the channel. But yeah, that is all I have for today's video. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Until then, I will see you guys on Friday. Peace.